Welcome to Education Insight. I'm Lacey Kendall. Today we're learning about the current state of California's community colleges, directly from the highest level leader in that system, Sonya Christian. That coming up in a moment, but first I'll look at what folks are talking about in education this week. Both the University of California and California State University systems are facing major budget cuts this year. Governor Gavin Newsom's proposed budget for 2025-26 includes an 8% reduction in state funding. So that means $396 million less for the UC and about $375 million less for the CSU. Officials are saying these cuts are going to hurt academics and student services. UC President Michael Drake says he's worried about how this will impact students and their campuses. CSU Chancellor Mildred Garcia has said she's disappointed, especially with the state's better-than-expected budget outlook. She hopes funding will be restored if state revenues improve. Garcia says the cuts will lead to larger class sizes, fewer course options, and fewer staff. This could delay student graduations and weaken California's ability to meet workforce demands. Both systems were expecting a 5% funding increase for 2025 and 26. However, that increase will now be delayed until the 2027-28 fiscal year. UC will also have to wait until then for their $31 million to cover the revenue they lost by enrolling more in-state students. Before the holidays, hundreds of national and state educational leaders, college presidents, superintendents, legislators and policymakers, and nonprofit directors met as they normally do annually for the Toward a Shared Vision conference in Riverside. It's aimed at bringing leaders together to collaborate and share ideas and forge paths to greater student outcomes in inland Southern California. One of the most popular features in the conference is called the Fireside Chat, where every year, 3 or 4 of the state or country's highest education leaders are invited to sit down and answer tough questions about education for their peers, but in a relaxed atmosphere, in their own words, and with their own, often quite honest, opinions and ideas. I was asked to moderate, and for several weeks since, our Education Insight team has been calling panelists, asking if we could share the recorded words from that event on this radio program. One that eagerly responded was Chancellor Sonya Christian of the California Community Colleges. She is the first female educator to lead the largest and most diverse system of public higher education in the nation. After welcoming her to the stage, I asked what she believes to be the most critical barriers that we need to overcome in the next few years to ensure that every student has access to the resources and the opportunities that they need in order to succeed. Chancellor Christian?
Well, first of all, I'm just super happy to be here. Thank you for the invitation. I see all my colleagues, Chancellor Rodriguez, Chancellor Isaac, and colleagues. You see the question itself, the way it was framed, talking about advancing outcomes and equity. I think it so reflects California. As an immigrant, I remember coming to California years ago for my graduate program and fell in love with how California is always trying to improve and make things better and is a model, not only for our nation, but also for the world. And I remember learning about the California community colleges at that time and thinking to myself, having grown up in India, that community colleges are a uniquely American invention. You've got a second chance, third chance. It's open access all the way. Anyone can walk in. There's nothing, that stops them through an application process. How remarkable. So in terms of advancing, educational attainment, even in the few decades that I've been faculty member and now the chancellor of the California Community Colleges, how cool is that? I mean, the advances are remarkable in closing equity gaps and still kind of pushing ourselves. So last year, the Board of Governors for the California Community Colleges, and I have one of the members here, Joseph Williams. Please stand up and be recognized. See, our Board of Governors approved a roadmap for California community colleges called Vision 2030, and really set our sights really high and challenged the idea, are we truly open access? I mean, for crying out loud, we have 2 million students, the largest higher education system in the nation, and we still challenge ourselves to say, are we truly open access? What about those Californians who have not found their way to us? And when we examine those Californians who have not found their way to higher education, and when we disaggregate the demographics, what we see is these populations are highly racialized. They're in our lower economic groups, and so our work is yet to be done. So simply put, when we're looking at our populations, Vision 2030 has divided up into 2 simple groups. One is our K through 12, and I'm so pleased that Superintendent Thurman is here because we work very closely in our dual enrollment, our adult education work together. We are doubling down with our investments and not just putting out resources, but with very specific technical assistance. We're moving with a mission. The second population is related to our adult Californians. Our adult Californians who may be in a low-income job and don't have the hope for that living wage job for their family and for advancement within their communities. California Competes is an organization that put out a report that Vision 2030 kind of got a hold of, and we made that our mantra, the 6.8 million adult Californians who we need to take college to them. And we're doing so by thinking about policy and systems that we can develop and not just take pathways to them that could be an easy, a gentle step rather than a quantum leap, but we're also thinking about support services. So this shared vision idea for tonight's dinner is so meaningful in the time that we find ourselves in. I mean, I always say that we are in the age of large-scale collaboration and large-scale cooperation because the work within our institutions, we're getting better and better at doing the work. But where the work really lies is across our institutions where those divisions, those silos, are actually fault lines that can keep us apart. So the shared vision that the Inland Empire is putting out there is really a model for the rest of the state to bring us together and solve problems like we've never been able to solve before.
Partnerships and collaborations between K-12 and post-secondary institutions, as we're discussing tonight, they're essential to driving systematic change in education. So my question is, what are some examples of successful cross-sector collaborations that have made an impact on student outcomes? And how can we strengthen those kinds of efforts moving forward?
I mentioned, the name of the game in 2024 to 2030 and beyond is collaboration and cooperation. So if you're looking at K through 12 and community colleges, for example, we'll talk more about dual enrollments. I'm not going to get into it. It's like a huge game changer. And, there's about 436,000 eighth graders coming into the ninth grade. And what if we can solve this problem at scale, right? And you mentioned the word at scale. So sitting at sort of a systems level, those are the solutions we're looking at. CSU partners, it's transitions, it's at baccalaureate attainment. I'm looking at my colleague and friend, Waldia Bisak, who did a great collaboration with UC Riverside in building housing project, right? We talked about homelessness and solving those problems. So problems that we could not solve as one organization or one system, we're now solving when we come together. What a beautiful example with Josh Friday talking about the College Core program. In fact, when I just started as new chancellor, Josh met with me and said, hey, we've got to do much more of College Core within community colleges. And Josh, I know exactly the model. It's going to be the Inland Empire Consortium that I'm going to now partner with to use it as a model to scale it statewide. We have industry examples. The state, our office, the Chancellor's office, partnered with the Governor's office. In our industry collaboration, we got into an MOU with NVIDIA, for example, when we're looking at the workforce changing very quickly. How can we bring that industry, fast-evolving industry training to our faculty and to our students? We also have collaboration with unions. Our big project that we're rolling out is with the United Domestic Workers, 178,000 individuals who provide home health care, right? And most of them are women. And so the community colleges, and again, the Inland Empire is involved with this work. We're looking at how do we take college to these individuals who are working long hours, they have families to take care of. How do we create the time and space for them to look at, as you said, the next, that next certificate, that next degree, so that we can focus on their economic mobility. And these are examples of collaboration that we're trying to do at a systems level that can impact all of the colleges and beyond in solving problems. Thank you.
The recent study on the perceptions of post-secondary education in the Inland Empire found that 86% of all IE residents believe in the value of higher education. However, 33% of job openings do not require any post-secondary degree. And the region's economy lacks the diversity needed to secure well-paying jobs that support economic mobility. So, how should the region motivate K-12 students and families to pursue that post-secondary education while advocating at the same time for high-wage industries to relocate here?
I mentioned this before. I think it's a false dichotomy to pitch skills attainment against degree attainment. And I think the burden really rests on us as the systems of higher education to make it clear that it's an ecosystem with connected pathways. So I think that burden really falls on us. So at the California Community Colleges, our Vision 2030 makes it very clear that we are in the business of recognizing skills and making those available to our students. So here are the examples that I talked about, right? If a student who doesn't have, or a Californian who doesn't have a degree, has a Google certificate for data analytics, this individual can get into an entry-level job in the tech industry and earn a good wage, right? But it's incumbent on us as community colleges to be able to provide pathways for that individual to then go on and get the gen ed and get that degree, because it is the degree that gets that economic mobility. So creating those pathways, and the superintendent talked about the next certificate, the degree, that is precisely what we're doing in a very intentional manner. We talked about apprenticeship, right? You think about a construction worker starting as an apprentice, they earn about $50,000 while they're going through their apprenticeship program. That's pretty darn good, right? Learning and earning. But what happens when this construction worker is, 31 years old and doesn't want to do this very physical work, and they want to come back? What do we say as higher education? Well, you got to get back and start your pathway right from ground zero. That doesn't make sense. So that is why the California community colleges are saying, well, if you have your construction apprenticeship, guess what? Here you are, credit for prior learning. You have these number of college credits that you have attained in our career technical. And then with these general education, you're at an associate's degree. Now you can get a community college baccalaureate, or you can transfer to one of our sister institutions at the CSU and get your baccalaureate degree. So that is the message that we are systematically and consistently putting out there. Yes, we are retooling. Yes, we are recognizing learning that happens outside, but it's about integrating the industry skills with higher education rather than dividing it more and saying, well, you don't need this, we need to focus on that. That's not the way. The future for skills-based recognition is bringing those skills and integrating it within the educational pathway to the next certificate, that degree, to the baccalaureate degree.
We'll have more insights from Chancellor Sonya Christian, taken from the Toward a Shared Vision Education Conference in Riverside, in just a moment. This is Education Insight. This is Education Insight. Today, we're featuring the comments of Dr. Sonya Christian, the Chancellor of California Community Colleges. She visited our area not long ago to speak with local and state education leaders. During the event, members of the audience asked if I, the moderator, would ask for her thoughts on the topic of dual enrollment, which is allowing high schoolers to take courses at local colleges that count towards both their high school and a college degree.
Dual enrollment, game changer. It was 2015. I was a newly minted president at Bakersfield College when Assemblymember Chris Holden came out with dual enrollment. And those of us in the field, we were looking at the legislation. To us, it was the equity answer to taking college to high school students, because in the past, college was available through AP courses. And to get every student seeing college in the future was sort of the idea behind AB 288. So I think the work started then. And I know I was in the Central Valley, Bakersfield College. We sort of doubled down on the dual enrollment work. And coming in as state chancellor, what we're putting out there is that every high school student must graduate with at least 12 college credits. Okay, that's the baseline. Now, many of them actually graduate with an associate's degree, even at the same time they get their high school diploma. The other piece that we're really emphasizing, that all of those pathways don't have to be transfer pathways. So if there is a high school student who wants to start with an apprenticeship, then it is up to us to be able to make that dual enrollment pathway where they're actually accumulating college credit through apprenticeship and CTE pathways. In fact, we're asking the question, could every high school student in the 9th grade have a course where they start thinking about careers and college education plan? It doesn't mean that it's in cement. It just means you're starting to think about it and get socialized with the idea that college is for them. Again, the superintendent put out some powerful stories. When someone tells you college is not for you, your dream gets shattered right at that very moment. So how do we make that the default option and the default story for every 9th grader that starts in California? So, we're in the last 5 years, we went from 179,000 students who are dually enrolled to now over 283,000. And we still have a lot more work to do when we look at the opportunity of those who are not engaged in dual enrollment. So our partnership with K through 12 is significant. And we're super excited about the Golden State Pathways and the investments that the state has made in dual enrollment. So go dual enrollment.
What promising practices are you seeing across the state that really the Inland Empire should be considering and applying?
Well, if we had our Vice Chancellor for Workforce, Tony Cordova, sitting right over there up here, he would actually say that the Inland Empire has the perfect model through the launch program, where you get employers working with the colleges and having them act as an intermediary to really enact workforce and economic development. The example that I will use is credit for prior learning, which is sort of the big initiative that we are pushing statewide. In fact, sort of gained visibility in about 2017 at Norco College. The idea really is that it is high time for higher education to recognize learning that is happening in life and in jobs. And we can't be sort of in this ivory tower saying that learning only happens in a certain setting called the classroom. So the California community colleges have tried to recognize this learning called credit for prior learning, and then give individuals college credit to accelerate them on a pathway to a credential. Okay, that's the concept. The reality is we ad hoc this idea, which is fundamental when you're talking about adult learners, because adult learners are coming seasoned with skills and abilities. We're not talking about individuals who are 15, 16, 17-year-olds. We're talking about those who are 28, 29, have lived life, have worked jobs. So in the age of AI and technology, how can we harness those capabilities to take care of the grueling tasks to identify what these skills are at scale so that colleges can provide those credits towards getting that credential? So we are in this work, and we believe that this is going to be a game changer for California. And in fact, we'll again put California yet again on the map. Think about this. We have 40,000 veterans who are in our community colleges. Imagine if we can, by the end of this year, tell each of them that at a very minimum, we're going to give you 12 credits for your military training. At a very minimum. Imagine. The superintendent, talked about apprenticeships. And apprenticeships and community colleges don't have to be two separate pathways. We can integrate it and recognize the learning that happens on the job training with an apprenticeship. So I'm really grateful to Riverside Community College District and Norco for starting this work. And when I took over as chancellor, in fact, we had the conversation about really giving it the support it needed to become a statewide solution for all of Californians who are wanting to come back to college for their economic and social mobility.
Our last question this evening is, looking ahead, what are your hopes for the future of education here in our state over the next decade? And I wanted to compound that by saying, what do you see as the most important changes or innovations that we need to begin embracing right now to ensure that our students succeed?
Well, let's see. I think the two things, the climate action and AI. So I'll just, wrap up my comments with those two kind of big ideas. I'm thinking about San Bernardino. Chancellor Rodriguez, you showcased your beautiful CTE building that's, built from a sustainability standpoint, which I think is a model that we should be adopting across the state for the California community colleges. But this concept of being really aware of our planet and taking care of our planet with all of the behaviors we have. So we are taking this on, whether, Josh spoke about the climate core. For us in the community colleges, we are looking at our facilities and our practices. We are looking at our curriculum, so climatizing curriculum to give the sense of purpose and responsibility to the next generations that are coming. And then what about workforce? Our workforce is turned upside down with the impact of how every sector is rethinking, greening of their industries, whether it is, when you talk about a regional approach, agriculture in the Central Valley and the ag tech tools that we're deploying to the entire rethinking in Northern California. When you think about our forestry, forest management, and wildfires, or you're thinking about coastal California and the blue economy, right? Workforce is being impacted. And so all of us are scrambling, and particularly California is leading the regulatory landscape and how to engage with climate action. And moving to AI and generative AI, in Vision 2030, we have three strategic directions, three goals, three strategic directions, and one of the three is focused on generative AI and the future of teaching and learning. You saw Superintendent Thurmond doing Siri, and then, Ashish says, use ChatGPT. This is becoming ubiquitous. Our grandparents and our parents are using ChatGPT, right? So when you think of writing an English composition class, when you're thinking, I put into ChatGPT to take the derivative of x squared, right? And it not only gives you the answer to the derivative, but it gives you all of the steps to do it. So it is a call for the community. We can't leave the work of AI and generative AI to our research think tanks, because if we're talking about keeping community in the middle of conversation so that the solutions are created with community and equity in the center, the answer to it is the California community colleges, because we are in tune with our communities. We're also in tune with our industry. So this is an area that we're getting in. We have launched, the Board of Governors just launched a digital center for innovation, transformation, and equity, where we're creating a laboratory for our faculty to try out new AI tools in a safe environment, because the equity and biases that are built in, if we're not careful, are significant. So I think beyond any other time, education really is at an amazing time when we're looking at reforms that are happening across our nation, across our world, and we can use tools that could be unifiers in our nation, tools like focusing on the health of our planet, tools like using generative AI that brings us together and collaborating to unify us to solve problems of the future. So with that, thank you so much for inviting me. I'm super happy to be here, and I'll turn it over to my colleague.
Our team here at Education Insight congratulates the 6 San Bernardino schools that were recognized recently in the 2024 Honor Roll of High-Performing California Schools. They include Hillside University Demonstration School, Kimbark Elementary, Pacuma K-8 School, Richardson Prep High Middle School, Rodriguez Prep Academy Middle School, and Middle College High School. That's a wrap on this week's show. Don't forget to join us for next week's Education Insight. I'm Lacey Kendall. Have a great week.
Education Insight is produced in partnership with KVCR San Bernardino.
Our executive producer is Jacob Poor.
And our production engineer is Tyler Veazey.
Alyssa Silva is our production assistant.
And Lacey Kendall is your host. Support is provided by College Futures Foundation.
Growing Inland Achievement. Working together for inland education and economic success.
Join us again next week for Education Insight.